afraid of the big bad wolf? Big bad wolf, big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Tra la la la. I am. I'm afraid of the big bad wolf, okay?
If you would like to learn about fairy folklore, delve into modern fairy faith spirituality, and explore fun and fanciful fairy-themed events, please subscribe to Fairy Fortunes for new videos every Friday.
Hello, my fair friends. I'm Ruby Ruse, and on today's episode of Fairy Fortunes, I'm going to be finishing my depth year process for 2020 by talking about the folktale story of the Three Little Pigs. I am aware that the Three Little Pigs are not fairies, but actually in a version that was dated about 1853, there is a version that exists where the Three Little Pigs are not pigs, but are the fairy creatures pixies. Now, this version in 1853 actually may be a mispronunciation of a Devon accent. The Devon accent will refer to pigs as pigsies, which understandably sounds very close to pixie. So it could be that they were never intended to be fairies at all, but truly were fable animals that talk and tell tales and give you a moralistic story at the end. When we're talking about the Three Little Pigs, the version that many of us are probably most familiar with is the Disney 1933 version, said to be one of the most influential animated films of all time. Now, the moral construct of this 1933 Three Little Pigs version is that it came to us right in the middle of the Great Depression era. Kind of became this American anthem during that time frame. The hero of the story, who is named Practical Pig, really shows how you can start from scratch, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and find a measure of success even in the darkest of times. As I was processing my depth year and going through the themes of November and December, I remembered the story of the Three Little Pigs, and I felt like it was resonating for me, and I was hiding from my own big bad wolf. In 2020, I made a decision to do a very specific spiritual journey called a depth year. And the idea behind a depth year is that you're supposed to dive deep into concepts and items that you already possess with you now in the present in your own home. The idea is to see what meaning these items and concepts and things have for you. Maybe the concepts have changed, maybe the meaning has changed, maybe these are ideas and things that you need to let go, or maybe this depth year process has rekindled interest and inspiration in you. When I did my depth year process, I gave myself an added spiritual element in that I used the 12 Houses of Geomancy and Astrology as the inspiration behind my monthly themes for my depth year. And so July was supposed to be very close and intimate relationships and partnerships, and then November was supposed to be friends. The truth is I failed dismally in those months, and I went into hiding from the big, bad, scary wolf. And the reason is that I have social anxiety. Oh, I know. You're wondering, you're like, hey, wait a minute, this woman has a YouTube channel and she talks all the time about going to all these festivals and she's doing workshops and she's on a podcast and doing all this stuff. And that's the thing, is that so many people think that social anxiety is shyness, and I'm here to tell you that I'm not shy, obviously. Social anxiety is a very different thing. What social anxiety really is about is this intense, petrifying fear of being judged harshly, of being inappropriate, of being the wrong person in the wrong place, saying the wrong thing, and also being rejected and abandoned. And we have a profound sense of coming across as stupid or awkward. It's actually very debilitating. One of my major triggers for my social anxiety is actually the telephone. I know. We are a society that walks around with telephones on us at all times, and like you're crazy if you don't have your cell phone on you. I definitely could live without a phone. I really could. But in order to, here we are in 2020, well, it's not 2020 anymore, but here I was in 2020 with this great plan of reconnecting with friends in the middle of one of the worst years since the Great Depression, where everybody is trapped at home and quarantining. So the only way that you can connect with people is generally over the phone. Another thing about social anxiety is that it can compound itself. So once you get into this cycle of, oh my God, nobody likes me, I'm being stupid, I'm a failure, they're gonna think I'm worthless, I have nothing positive to say, all these things going on in my head, then when you get to the point where you have the phone in your hand and you're literally shaking because you can't get your hand to dial the number or just go to the context list and press the name of the person you want to talk to. Like, it should be easy. It should be. And then, as I said, you get to that point where you're thinking all of these things, and then you literally cannot make yourself call the person, and then they call you, and then you're like, I will call them back. And then a day goes by, and you're like, I'm gonna call him, and I'm gonna meditate, and I'm gonna get my head on straight, and I'm gonna call them. And then another day goes by, and then that day turns into a week, and then that week turns into a month. And then there you are with their message sitting in your voice mailbox, and you haven't even listened to it, and it's been 2 months, and by that time you just can't even, you feel like such a loser. Yay! Welcome to social anxiety! What a happy world to live in! Woo! The whole point of the story, the whole point of this rambling, is to make the point is that this big looming big bad wolf with his huffing and his puffing and he's going to blow your house in. It just becomes so enormous in your head, and your entire house just collapses on top of you with social anxiety. So for me, the big bad wolf is such a perfect allegory for what social anxiety is like. Now, in the 1933 version of The Three Little Pigs that so many of us are familiar with because it was such an influential film in its day, the main moral that we're supposed to take from this story is, of course, the tale of the practical pig who works hard, pulls himself up by his bootstraps. He's not afraid of hard work, and this was very much the anthem of the 1930s in the Western world. It was all very much focused on a strong work ethic. And then Fifer Pig and Fiddler Pig are depicted as lazy, is that they don't want to put in the effort, and so they build these very flimsy, fast houses that collapse around them when the big bad wolf comes. And that is the moral of the story in the 1933 version. However, in older versions of the story, the moral that you're supposed to take away is really that it's what happens to you can be about happenstance. Because in some versions of the story, the pigs are simply using the materials that they have on hand. So the first little pig builds his house of straw because that's where he is. And of course, then his brother has to move on because the first brother has taken claim of the straw. So he goes on and he goes to a wooded area and has sticks at hand. And that's what he builds his house out of, because that is what is there at the time. And then finally, the last pig comes across stones, and he has to build his house of stones because that's all that's left at the time. And then it's just luck that his house is the stronger of the three. I think that a problem that we have in the modern times is when people try to talk about things like anxiety and depression, is that we have this idea in our head that we can just work hard and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and we can make it right if we're truly focused and we work hard enough. But sometimes it does not work that way. Now, I do think that there are many things that we do need to put effort forth into managing, not just mental health issues, but health issues of all kinds. But genetically speaking, some people are just lucky and they don't have social anxiety. There are people in this world that when something truly traumatic happens to them, they are just amazingly able to navigate through that trauma with such exquisite grace. And then there are others that, I can't even dial a phone. I can't even dial a phone. It's just sad and tragic. Oh. I'm making fun of myself, but that's true. It's like, why is it that someone can navigate through this horrible thing and then my trauma is a ringing phone? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think that we have to be a little bit more understanding and a little more caring, not just of other people, but also ourselves, is that sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. It doesn't mean that we're lazy. It doesn't mean that there's something intrinsically bad about us. What it means is that it just is the luck that we had. It is what it is. And we have to let go of trying to be something maybe that we're not. Now, while in the 1933 version of The Three Little Pigs, which is the one that came to my mind when I was struggling severely with social anxiety as I'm trying to connect with people in November, that version of the story really does kind of depict the two previous pigs, Fifer and Fiddler Pig, as being the lazy brothers that don't want to work. But to some extent, that earlier carryover is still there in that they are working with the materials that are accessible and on hand at the time. So for me, The Three Little Pigs still does kind of resonate with that lesson of you've got to work with what you have. There are some times when my anxiety lessens and I am able to do more socially. And there are times when I'm just going to have to make do with what I have in the moment. For example, when I do workshops at festivals, I make sure that I do not take a room with a roommate. I prefer to do festival settings by myself because I do need to go into a quiet space that is just mine so that I can decompress and ground out all of that frenetic energy that comes with interacting with a lot of people. So while I am a gregarious person, I am a very outgoing person, I'm certainly not shy, and I do love to have interactions with people. Making do for me is making sure that I have things that I need that can help navigate through what I know to be is social anxiety. And I do appreciate the 1933 message of having that strong work ethic, of having this sense that what you do does matter. So you put in the work. Meditation is putting that work in. Making sure that I have that room that I mentioned earlier, that's putting in the work. And the other thing that I really like about the Three Little Pigs story is that, like I said, it really became this very powerful metaphor for me for social anxiety. The big bad wolf is social anxiety coming to eat you. While the Three Little Pigs do, in fact, at the end of almost every version of the Three Little Pigs story, conquer the big bad wolf, is that he's kind of relentless. Like, he never really goes away. Like, he can be managed, but he's out there. And so, once again, it kind of goes back to that message of making do, of mitigating, of navigating. My social anxiety was definitely the reason that I'm missing videos in my depth year journey for 2020. But the topic actually for the 12th house is, the 12th house is actually the house of troubles. And so that is why I'm making this video now to finish out this series. But 2020 was fraught with so much trauma for many of us that it was important for me during the month of December to kind of download all of that information and try to process through what was going on and what I had lived through during 2020. So even though I had lived through some other very traumatic incidents in 2020, what stayed with me, what the regrets were missing out on connections with people that are very important to me. That became a strong goal for 2021, was really trying to get a better handle on my social anxiety. So if you like this kind of topic where I compare real life challenges to fairy stories and folklore, you may actually also enjoy my video. Fairy morality is not about good or evil, 7 fairy values. I also want to draw your attention to the description box of this video. In addition to my usual list of resources that I include in my descriptions, I've also included some really helpful and important resources for mental health. One of the resources that I have is the Samaritans. Another one is NAMBI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And also, if you are in crisis, I also have provided a link to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. November was supposed to be this time where I was delving deep into my relationships, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it because of the chaos I was experiencing at that time. And I just got lost in my social anxiety, and I was ignoring it. I was ignoring my big bad wolf. So I don't want you to ignore your big bad wolf, whatever that is. I would have to say that my depth year process really helped me look that big bad wolf dead in the eye. Not by the hair of my chin chin chin. The depth year process has really become quite an integral part of my fairy faith spirituality. So if you would like to learn more about my personal spiritual journey, I would invite you to find me on Facebook and Instagram. I post almost daily content that is unique to both of those platforms almost daily, so I do hope you'll check me out there. And also you can find me at fairyfortunes.com. Do go in and check out my blog posts, because I do share quite a bit of my spiritual journey on there as well. And with that, be safe and have a magical day.